I'm not movie star good looking. I will never be skinny. I will never be tall, and I'll never be cool. That's who I am, and I think it works.
And in this edition of Unopened Gifts, we hear from Brian Murphy, also affectionately referred to as Murph, who works with some of the top athletes in the world, negotiates contracts for hundreds of millions of dollars. He'll share with what I would say is humility. He is the preeminent sports agent of Athletes First and president of the same firm.
Of the choices made by humanity, to share one's gifts may well be the most surprising route to happiness and success. Gifts given and gifts received, each requiring a unique perspective to an opening where we find the opportunity of wonder. We bring you now on a journey with those who have discovered how to unlock the power of their unopened gifts.
Hello, I'm James McPartland. You can call me Mac. Welcome to this edition of Unopened Gifts. It's my goal with this program, through the eyes of Brian Murphy today, is to bring a gift to you, for you to look inside of yourself, see the gift that you have, to bring to the world, and perhaps put your own version of a dent in the universe.
If you can find a path with no obstacles, it probably doesn't lead anywhere.
In 2001, along with David Dunn and Joby Brannion, Brian Murphy founded Athletes First, which today stands as the preeminent sports agency for the NFL in the United States. It wasn't an easy journey. It was in David Dunn's living room, some 14 years ago, that Brian and Joby had a dream. They had a vision, they had a plan, but they had no cash and they had no athletes.
What I tell every new person that's interested in Athletes First is, our history dictates that we're different than any other sports agency out there, because no other sports agency has ever gone through what we went through. And if they did, they wouldn't endure it. They wouldn't survive. That experience makes us completely different in terms of loyalty and stick-togetherness and pride in Athletes First and pride in doing things the right way. So, unbelievable unopened gift that we never really wanted to know we have, but we had to find out. And so, going back to the beginning, right before I got to Steinberg, Moret and Dunn, they had sold their company to a Canadian public corporation called Asante. And Asante had spent a lot of money, $100 million plus, buying Steinberg, Moret and Dunn. And then they went and they purchased a lot of other agencies under our direction. And so they probably spent about $500 million on purchasing different sports agencies. And they were building a dynasty similar to an IMG model or a SFX model at the time. And so when Dave and I left, and then the employees followed us, and then inevitably, probably 70–80% of the clients followed us as well, the Canadian corporation was pretty upset that all these assets and revenues that they just purchased had just walked out the door. And they were afraid that the same thing would happen to all the other agencies that they purchased. And so what they told us is, whether you're right or whether you're wrong, we need to make an example of you, because we can't have the number 2 guy leaving all the different agencies and all the clients following them. They just, as they said, they had to pick at our financial carcass. That's exactly what their general counsel said to us. And so they sued us in federal court, they sued us in state court, they sued myself, they sued Dave's assistant, they sued Dave. And at the end of the day, they spent $18 million in legal fees trying to destroy us. That was all they wanted to do, was destroy us. We didn't have any money. We didn't have any, I was a lawyer, Dave was a lawyer, Joby Brannion, our other partner, was a lawyer, but we weren't equipped to fight that type of battle. So we had to, find some money quickly. And similar to my interview process, we met with 100, 150, 200 different people who, oh, you guys are sports agents and you represent Drew Bledsoe and John Lynch. yeah, let's meet. You know, we sit down, we meet, we tell them our story, we show them our projected financials, which were pretty much made up because we had no idea what was going to happen. And they say, wow, we wish you luck. It's a great story, and we think you're going to do well, but we're not going to invest because obviously you're being sued and all the money we're going to give you is going to go to litigation. If you lose litigation, we just burn our money, you know? And so time and time and time has happened, and we just need to find, you know, money. And we ended up meeting with Tom Gores of Platinum Equity up in LA through a friend of Joby's, Lawrence Antoine. And we sat down with Tom Gores, who has an extremely successful business. And we told him our story, and we told him, you know, our hardships, and we told him what battle was going through. And he said, I love it. You know, you guys are up against all odds. I'll give you the money you need, and just work out the details with Lawrence, and there you go. It was that easy, like that. So we were able to get some finances, and which allowed us to hire some attorneys. And for years and years, we fought and we fought and we fought. And so while half our company was out trying to run our business and doing a great job of it, the other half was, you know, in court, in mediations, in arbitrations, legal strategies, you know, hiring lawyers, firing lawyers because they were too expensive, you know, to the point where eventually we hired my college roommate from Cleveland, and I called him and said, hey, Mark Humes is his nickname, Humes, you still want to be a sports agent? Because we talked about it all through college. He's like, yeah, absolutely. I said, okay, would you like to move out to California and become our general counsel? And he's like, I'll be there tomorrow. And I'm watching the trial unfold, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, we are terrible people. Like we're horrible. Like, one, not only do I look fat on my deposition video, but like I can't believe what bad people were, because the other side, with all the technology and all their stories, and they're able to parse pieces of, you know, mine was a 12, 14, 15-day deposition. They just told this story that was so far from reality, but sounded great. And so trial ended, and jury went to deliberate, and the jury came back with deliberations, and we had this war room in our office, and I said, okay, here's the different scenarios. We win, we lose, you know, $250,000. In the worst case, can never survive scenario, we lose $5 million, right? And we had all plans for all of them. The jury comes back, I was a little off. We lost $40 million, not $5 million. Dave lost $4 million, so $44 million verdict against us, 20 of which was punitive, which means it's never going away. I mean, no matter what we do for the rest of our life, every quarter, every dollar we make, we have to pay a quarter, 50 cents, whatever the law is. And so that was a big blow, huge blow. We found out the verdict. Justin Schulman's brother-in-law called it into us, and we immediately went across the street to our local tavern and ordered a round of beers, and the waitress came up and said, how you guys doing today? And I said, I'm doing great. Everyone looked at me like, what? And I said, I'm doing great. And she's like, why? I'm like, I just found out we're worth $44 million.
So a lot of what you're going to hear from Brian, resonant in his story, is the concept or the distinction, or let me say the difference, between playing not to lose and playing to win. Brian chose, against odds, as you'll hear time and time again in this program, to fight on, to play to win, not play not to lose, which would have been the easy way out. Brian practices a formula I call the until formula. Now, the simple version of the until formula has to do with children. How long would you give the average baby until that baby learned to walk? Now, most of us wouldn't say, well, look, you had a couple shots at it, it didn't work, sorry, you don't get to walk. You keep practicing with that child keeps practicing until that child learns to walk. Brian's commitment, and that's the big thing here, his vision and his belief in himself and his dream is what drove him. And he took the until formula. Until we can get financing, and until we can develop clients, and until we can build a business team, until we can go out into the marketplace, I'm committed to it. And the thing about Brian's story, which really sings to me, is even when everything seems to be lost, you probably have one more move. Also, Brian's a man of integrity. He was very transparent and very honest with people throughout this ordeal. Now listen, people were scared. The original financiers were saying, I don't know if we can give you money. But people bought into Brian's dream and his vision. And the fact that he said, look, we've had this setback, we had this loss, it might not go our way, but we're committed to this. You know, people buy people, and people buy Brian. and people buy Dave and they buy Joby and now his agency, or they wouldn't be where they are in the world if they weren't honest, if they didn't have authenticity, and if they didn't have integrity. What Brian's given us is the gift of determination, of honesty, and as I say, integrity. And you know, I'd say maybe I could just encapsulate it in the gift of truth. The great thing about what Brian gives us, by virtue of this truth, is if you tell the truth, you don't have to have a great memory. If you're authentic about who you are and what you want, people will gravitate towards you. And if you persevere, if you're committed, and if you use your gifts, you can find a way.
The one thing that we stuck to and this is years of this going on, the one thing that every single employee at Athletes First, every friend of Athletes First stuck to was, if you do things the right way and for the right reasons, eventually you'll get the right result. And you know, that saying doesn't mean there's not going to be bumps in the road, I mean, huge bumps in the road. But we started the company for the right reasons. We had a philosophy that we kind of created in those couple of days in Dave's living room. And to Dave's credit, you know, he's the first one to say, listen, keep going forward, keep marching forward. And the whole time we're going through this, Asante was offering Dave a lot of money to go back. But he kept turning it down because he wanted to do the right thing, you know, and he probably had some doubts about his, you know, turning down whatever they offered him when we got that verdict against us. But we just gathered up. We said, hey, listen, we know we're doing things the right way. We know we didn't do anything wrong. You know, let's just keep marching forward. And the ironic thing was, during this whole time that the litigation, like on a scale of 1 to 100, was 1,000, you know, bad, our business was booming. We signed Carson Palmer, who was the #1 pick in the draft. We signed, about 1 year we had the #3 pick, the #4 pick, you know, Joey Harrington, Mike Williams, Robert Thomas, Deshaun Foster. We're signing veterans like Todd Heap and Ray Lewis, John Lynch. I mean, our business went from 0 clients in Dave's living room to a large number of clients, and many of them Pro Bowl caliber players. And I think many people in the industry were like, how is that possible? How are they bankrupt, basically? I mean, literally bankrupt, and still convincing all these players to sign with them. And that, to us, the players that we didn't even know, that we go in their living room and we say, yes, we owe $44 million. Yes, we are bankrupt. Yes, if we don't win the appeal, we're going to be gone. But let me tell you about all of the advantages of Athletes First. And those people, total strangers and their families, trusting us and saying, we want to be a part of that. That just gave us affirmation that we're doing the right thing. And so there's nothing to do. I mean, we could have settled the case after the appeal, paid a lot of money, and gone back to work for them, or we could have filed the appeal. And Mark Humanick, you know, our general counsel, said, I really think we have a good chance to win the appeal. I said, you're crazy. No one ever has a good chance to win the appeal. And we got killed at trial, you know. And he and his wife like, no, I think we can win. I think we can win. So we had to declare bankruptcy to file the appeal. So we're in Chapter 11. When we're in Chapter 11, our union, NFLPA, which gives you the right to negotiate contracts, they came knocking on our door saying, hey, we don't like everything that was going on. You know, we're not sure we want you guys still to be certified. We may have to suspend you or take your license away. And from what they had heard at trial, you know, we couldn't blame them. But we're like, can you please just wait for everything to be resolved, and we'll show you, you know, that we didn't do anything wrong. So we filed the appeal, and I'll never forget the day that I'm sitting in my office and Mark Humanick comes running down the hallway and slides on his knees, and he's got the opinion in his hand, and we had won. So that was a huge relief, and we ended up, you know, going forward with some arbitrations and getting ready for a new trial. But shortly thereafter, common sense prevailed, and we were able to settle the case and get rid of all the litigation, which is great. Unfortunately, at that point, that's when the union came back and said, hey, we understand you won the case, and we understand there's no more litigation, but we still think it's appropriate for us to take action, disciplinary action against your certified agents, you know. So they levied some suspensions, including suspending Dave for 18 months. We thought that could be the death knell because he was our president, you know, the president at the time, and you know, he was our lead agent and whatnot. And I don't think we lost a single client because of it. Everyone here got better. You know, it's when you lose your superstar, everyone else has to step up.
Experience is not what happens to a man. It is what a man does with what happens to him.
You know, the many jewels or the gifts or the lessons that come from Brian, one that really jumps out to me after participating in this last clip was trust. And that trust is in your own motives. If you understand your motives, if you believe in yourself, if you have a purpose and a vision and you're committed to it, you can overcome most anything in your life. Now, the clients and the staff that he was trying to attract and retain had probably not much to go on other than his vision, the words he used, the language to paint the picture for them. And interesting enough, he was able to attract incredible talent. Because, you know, whether it's staff or whether it's athletes, everyone wants to be on a winning team. And perhaps even those athletes love the choice of being on a second winning team, those they played for and being part of Athletes First. That's proved itself time and time again. What Brian also shares is what you focus on expands. The things you think about come about. So when those obstacles presented themselves, Brian's got an amazing gift to shift, to think about possibility. What could we do here? What's available to us? Who can I speak to? As opposed to, it's game over. Because as we see time and time again with Brian, there's always another move to make on the chessboard. Brian's all in. And there's something to be said about being all in. When you're 110% focused, at least on your 50%, you can do amazing things with what you can control. What we can't control is the outcome. If we let that go, that will be what it will be, and focus on what we can do, use our gifts, amazing things can happen.
No one's going to go through life without trials and tribulations. No one's going through life without obstacles. No one's going to go through life never, being sad or never being saying, how did this happen? And as I tell a lot of people, if you go, or a lot of people work, if you go a few days, a few weeks, a month or two without making a mistake or without failing, then you're not really playing the game. You need to go play a different game, or you need to play at a different court. I mean, if you're at basketball court 1 and you've won 7 games in a row, it's time to move to basketball court 2. Because you're not learning, you're not progressing, you're not really doing anything. You're just being a bunch of 3-year-olds at basketball, And so everyone's going to have those trials. Everyone's going to have those tribulations. And we can't control that. But what we can control, and what's completely in our willpower, is how we react to that, how we think about it, how we process it, and how we respond to it. And I think that's where really the positive self-talk is. Every crisis, every obstacle is an opportunity. And you truly can learn from it, and you can truly overcome it one way or the other, but only if you believe that, and only if you look at it as an opportunity. And again, so many things have happened to me in my life, along the way, whether it's personal or professional, where I think a lot of people would just fold their cards and say, I'm done, it's over. And I'm definitely not all that much more intelligent than other people. I'm definitely not stronger than other people. I hate pain, but I think the one characteristic that I do have that's helped me is looking at everything in a really positive way. Okay, so X happened, which is terrible, but we can turn X into a positive, or we can learn from X and make our lives better going on. That's the only way I know how to react to adversity, because the other choice is to dwell upon, this is terrible, this is horrible, this sucks. And then moving forward, because you have a negative state of mind, everything's going to be bad, everything's going to be negative, and you're just perpetuating the negative as opposed to taking a right turn and trying to get positive things out of it. And I think one thing that people at Athletes First always say is, whenever we get bad news with a client, I'll give you a great example. We got fired by a client about a year and a half ago, 20 months ago. It was a client that everyone really liked. He's about to do a big contract. It was a big blow to Athletes First, and it's something that should never happened. And everyone was like, wow, this is terrible. We lost money, we lost a client, people are going to use this against us. What a bad day. And my response was, no, this is perfect. I'm really glad this happened. What are you talking about? I said, that person should never have fired us. That means we're doing something wrong in terms of our client maintenance. Let's take this opportunity and prioritize client maintenance, which we kind of thought we were doing a great job on, but obviously if he fired us, we're not. So we had a company retreat, and the whole theme was client maintenance, client maintenance, client maintenance. And from that, we got a client maintenance team. We had different processes set up. We have different protocols set up. And now at this retreat that we just came back from 2 years later, we haven't had anyone fire us in 12, 14, 15, 16 months, which had never happened before. And so a really negative event, which could have been a reason to, hang our heads and be down and despondent for a while, we looked at that as an opportunity to improve. And now we've not only maintained and retained all of our clients, but we've added a bunch more because of the high level of services we're giving them.
I couldn't wait for success, so I went ahead without it.
A lot of things have gone wrong in life, and I think it is important to fail a lot as long as you respond properly. And I think my response to failure and to adversity probably is like any other skill. It got better the more I failed. And so I think it's important that, it's like I said, it's like any other skill. You have to be willing to take the risk, and you have to be willing to fail, and you have to be willing to do it again and fail and do it again. Every time you do it again, you're doing it a little bit better because you learn from your prior failure. And so I think that characteristic is, I think everyone has it, but you just have to be willing to fail and get back on the horse. Because if you're just willing to fail and not try again, you're never learning something. You're just bouncing from failure to failure, 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 failure. But if you're willing to get back on the horse, then you'll become a better rider every time you get back on. And so I think it's probably a skill that, unfortunately, I've sharpened, mastered just through multiple failures and getting back on, And I think the getting back on part, as you could probably relate to, that's just the Irish stubbornness in me. I'm just going to get back on that horse.
Now, before the break, we heard from Brian the importance of failure. That sounds kind of funny. His point, fail fast, move on. But the key in that is to capture the lesson. What have you learned from the setback? What can you do that's transformative to take that lesson and use it as a force for good in your life? Now, Brian also gives us the benefit of what I would call the delineation between decision and choice. When faced with decision, we have multiple options to consider before we pick. When we face a choice, we may have multiple options, but we may decide to do something completely different that's not in front of us. Brian gives us the power of choice. He's able to see, to invent a new possibility that wasn't in front of him until he started to look for opportunities instead of obstacles. Now, Brian will kid and say that, he's mastered, or he has a PhD in failure, or we'd like to say a PhD in FAIL. And as he and I have been together, we used to kid about it. He said, I had a PhD in DUMB until I learned to take the gift and the setback and use it as a force for good in my life. That's made all the difference in being able to overcome this lawsuit, some personal setbacks, some family challenges, and to pursue the things I want to do in my life. Learn the lessons, fail frequently, and move on. And Brian will tell you, he calls it his Irish background. It's not failure if you get back up one more time, if you put a saddle back on the horse. And the last 2 points I'll leave you with, Brian is all about perseverance, and in reality, discipline. Now, people might say to me in the coaching work I do, or if I'm engaging an audience, I don't have perseverance, or I don't have discipline. That's not something you find when you open up your kimono. It's an action. Perseverance and discipline aren't what you have, it's what you do. Brian teaches us through failure is you get up one more time. You have the discipline, you focus, and you exercise it like a muscle, and that's a gift that keeps on giving.
A man who speaks truth is always at ease.
They need to hire me for who I am, not an image of who I think they want me to be.
So as Brian and his partners were building this new agency, Athletes First, he continued to promote and to perpetuate this concept of family amongst his potential clients, their family members, within his own family, and in his staff. Now, a lot of people give lip service to that. But the thing is, people hear what they see. And they saw in Brian a true commitment. Now, he was out coaching his children's soccer games. He was at his wife's bedside when she became ill. He was spending time with his parents. And when he would get into the living room of those athletes who might go from college to the NFL, he would share that. And trust me with your son, because in my life, that's the most important thing to me. Now, a lot of people will throw a lot of money at these athletes, but one thing they won't throw at them is integrity, honesty, and truth. Now, Brian walks the walk and he talks the talk, and his examples speak louder than anything else he could have said to us today. He learned it from his grandparents, or perhaps his parents learned it from their parents. He certainly modeled it based on his mother and father, and it's an example that many of us can learn from and perhaps should follow.
What we do here at Athletes First is we're problem solvers. And so the problem is player X wants to get a large contract, as much money as he possibly can. Team Y wants to sign that player to a long-term contract for as little money as he possibly can. And how do you make those pieces of the jigsaw puzzle go together? And I think the absolute key is listening. Listening to both sides. So sitting down with the player, educating the player, explaining what the market is for the player, explaining the benefits of a long-term, short-term, the different structures, and then listening to what's important to him. What does he want? Was he looking for long-term guarantees? Does he want to roll the dice and maybe go to free agency? What's important to him? And then going to the team and saying, what's important to you? Like, what's in this contract? There's different components of the contract. There's guaranteed money, there's cash flow, there's average per year, there's structure, there's side assignment. What's important to you as a team? What are you trying to accomplish? What would make this a win for you? And then you take all those answers and you try to morph them together and come up with a contract that makes the team happy and makes the player happy. But you've also researched it and defined it such that it's going to be a top of the market contract. And I think to do that, you need to have the trust. The player has to trust you that you, one, know what you're doing, two, understand the market, and three, are going to put their priorities over our own. They have to trust that. If they don't trust that, it's not going to get done. The team, conversely, they have to trust us that when we present them with research, it's valid, it's objective, and it's true, that we're going to listen to them, that we're not out to be adversarial with them, that we want to sit on the same side of the negotiation table. And then, yes, while we're trying to get the largest deal possible for our player, if that's important to him, we'll want to do so in a way that works with their salary cap, that doesn't offend any of their principles, any of their team policies. And they need to trust us that we're going to do that and that we're going to come to the table with honest, good information and great rationale as to why our players should get paid X instead of Y. And I think that over the years with Dave Dunn kind of leading the way, we have forged that reputation in the business where we don't come in and pound our fists, we don't yell, we don't bluff, we don't use BS data. We come straightforward, candid. We couldn't be more prepared. We couldn't have thought it from many more different directions. We have 6 or 7 different people who all look at every deal and a different set of eyes on it. And we're going to be honest. And I think using that approach, we may not always get a deal done. Sometimes a player will go to free agency. Sometimes a player will take a deal that we don't maybe think they should, but they want to not roll the dice. But everybody there will feel good about the process. And there will never be any cracks of doubt or deceit or anything like that.
Being defeated is often a temporary condition. Giving up is what makes it permanent.
As we continue down this path with Brian, he calls himself a problem solver. I would say it a different way. He's a possibility seeker. Now, one of the key things he emphasizes here, and this is a real gift, is listening. In day-to-day dialogue, there's a difference between hearing and listening. Yes, we might be hearing, we might be head nodding, but are we really listening? As he described, if you may have what be considered 2 opposing forces, right? An athlete who wants to maximize his talent and make the most money, a team that wants to take advantage of that but not have to make the most money or pay the most money because they have their own limitations, how to bring those 2 forces together. Now, what Brian says is he sits down face to face to really truly understand each entity and to find congruence. That act of listening, that gift of listening, becomes almost like a hand-in-glove partnership that he has time and time again brought to fruition, which made him and his business the best of the best. So Brian has the gift of listening. Now, in your day-to-day dialogue, you can catch yourself, as I might catch myself, as we frequently catch ourselves. Are we really listening, or are we waiting to reply? And one of the most important things we can do with that listening is understanding the life lessons that have come to us and what we have learned And are we not only learning it, but applying it? Not from the perspective of being in the stands, but being on the court with it. How do we apply what we've learned in our life? Brian does have that gift of listening. And what we're going to learn as we go down the road here is how he's had to take advantage of those listening skills, understanding determination, understanding perseverance, and how integrity, truth, and authenticity have come to really serve him when he's needed it most.
We started this company in 2001, and I was 31 years old at the time. And when we started the company, Dave really focused on the football operations, and I really focused on building the company. But all I had was a law degree and 4 years as an attorney and 2 years at Steinberg Bryan Dunn. So I didn't know anything about building a company at all. And I hope over the last 12 years, I've become a much better leader, much better president. But again, if I have, it's because of all the failures that I experienced along the way. And I think that the one thing, if I go back and talk to the 32-year-old Brian Murphy who's just starting to run Athletes First and who's trying to, build this empire, I would go back and I just tell him, listen, lead by example. You need to lead by example. I mean, you cannot preach X, Y, Z and then go out and not do that. Everything you want your team to do, you have to do first. And at the time, when I first started the company, I kind of try to have different standards. So we have different standards for David and I and Joby because we're running the company and you guys are just working here. So I want to tell you guys to do this, but we're going to do this. And quickly found out, or not quickly, but slowly found out over a bunch of trial and error, that just doesn't work. You have to earn the respect of your team. You need to earn the leadership role. The fact that you started the company and that you brought these people on and that you have a title over your name doesn't, entitle you to any deference or respect or admiration. You need to go out and live the life and do the work the way you expect others to do it.
So, as Brian goes down this path and he tells him the story of having to learn how to build a company with no previous experience, this is when many gifts open for Brian. Let me give you an example. The series of setbacks he went through time and time again, he did have to prove to himself that he could take those setbacks, ask an empowering question, and use them as a force for good in his life. He had to continue to come back to learn that lesson, which we often have to do when we don't learn the lesson because the lessons repeat themselves. He learned the importance of honoring your word in all you do, because people hear what they see. And when he spoke to the people and to their families and to employees and to potential clients about who he was and what he stood for, yes, they heard the words, but they looked for the actions, they looked for the consistency, they looked for the congruence in everything that Brian did on a day-to-day basis. And it's interesting, he talks about respect. From my perspective, respect is something you rent daily. As a matter of fact, you pay rent on it daily because you could lose it in a flash. Something that takes you a lifetime to build can be gone tomorrow. And it's unfortunate, but people look for train wrecks. They look for us to stutter. They look for us to make mistakes. In Brian's case, if and when he did, and we all do, he got up, brushed himself off, admitted what had happened, what he had learned, and what he was going to do to course correct, which is an amazing sign of strength and trust because everyone's going to make a mistake from time to time. And for Brian, life's a big scoreboard, right? The people that he plays with, the people that he signs, the games that he goes to. For him, actions are the ultimate scoreboard. Now, all of these great things, and now he's been able to take these life lessons and apply them to family members, to clients, to their families, to other companies who partner with him. Time and time again, we ultimately are tested, did we learn the lesson? And Brian's been tested. He'll share a story where he had to draw on his inspiration, his ability to listen, his discipline, his perseverance to work through what we'll learn here was an unexpected gift of a family challenge. And one of the things that he will tell you that he learned and that he's most proud of, he learned to accept the gift of accepting help from others. Listen to the story.
Lauren has had type 1 diabetes since she was 9. It's been a battle for her life, a battle that she's won. She's run marathons, she's run half marathons, she's had 2 kids, children, she's exercised, she's been healthy, her everything's going great. But this past March, she had an incident where her blood sugars went too low. She didn't wake up, so she had a seizure. And our oldest daughter, Mackenzie, found her having a seizure on the floor. And we rushed her to the hospital, and she ended up in a coma on Sunday early morning. And she stayed in that coma for about 7 to 10 days. And that was in March, and we're in September now, and she's home. She's doing much better, but she's still doing therapy 3 or 4 times a week. Her brain's still not functioning properly. She's independent. She can do everything she used to do, but she has overwhelming bouts of anxiety and just different issues going on where her mind's just not firing right. And so it's been a huge, huge struggle, and it's been different, and it's been much more difficult and challenging than any litigation we went through, because if we lost our litigation, at the end of the day, we lost our company. You know, here you're on the verge of losing your wife, and then you're trying to hold your family together while she's recovering, and that's pretty important. But in terms of life lessons, so many. And you and I have talked about this. There's so many life lessons that have come out of this. So many silver linings. It's forced us both to really slow down life, not make so many commitments, and realizing that we need to prioritize ourselves, our family, and our own time, which we have always done. But we always had tons of commitments and kind of running around and trying to go to this event or that event or this game or whatnot, and work function, and just saying no and saying we need to take time to heal your brain. And that kind of quieter lifestyle has been a huge blessing. We've always made time for our kids, and we always made time for coaching. We always made time for school plays. We always made time for all that. But we never really made time just for relaxing. And now we have doctors all across the country telling her the only way your brain is going to get better is by relaxing, taking naps, reading, quiet time. And so to get her back, we've had to do that, and that's been a great silver lining. The other silver lining is when it happened in March, I basically said, I'm gone. I need to be at the hospital every day. I need to drive my kids to school. I need to pick them up from school. I need to drive them to activities. We really didn't have a lot of help, we had Lauren's parents who were a great help, and my parents were here for a great help. But, Lauren's condition was hard to have other people in the house. And so I took on a lot of that responsibility. And as such, I wasn't here in March, here being Athletes First in March or April, which was a pretty important time for our company. And we have 19 other people who work here, and they didn't skip a beat, and they didn't complain, and they didn't make me feel bad for not being here. I think another silver lining is you realize, wow, I come to work with this team every day. I love this team. We've always done great things together, but there's a difference between like signing a #1 pick overall or doing a largest NFL contract, for Aaron Rodgers. Those are great feelings, great accomplishments, and it was total team effort. But when you see my wife down and out, and my family and my daughters in need, and the 19 members of Athletes First family and extended our clients, our clients step up and say, we'll do anything that you need, no questions asked. That's awesome. That's like no clue that they would be willing to do that. And to a man, to a woman, every single employee we have, all the clients that I know, clients' families, they were all there with their hands out saying, how can we help? And so that, obviously, you don't want your wife to go in a coma, and so we are talking silver linings here. But that life lesson that, these people who, I'm their agent, I'm supposed to do work for them, the employees here, they give their heart and soul at work. They don't have extra time to do stuff personally. For those groups of people just to do what they did and support us like they did, that's an awesome life lesson.
The many things that you would find if you looked up Brian Murphy in the dictionary, one would be of relentless service to his people, to his team, to his clients. Serving people that he puts ahead of himself far more often than perhaps he should. He provides opportunities for many, the types of opportunities they may never have gotten had they not crossed paths with Brian. But the thing that goes along with that is there are a lot of people who see Brian, and he leads a glamorous life from the outside looking in, who want a piece of that. Brian has to be sometimes careful as to the motives of those that he's around. What has happened with this experience with Lauren, with his wife, has taught him a valuable lesson he shared with me many, many times because he's been overwhelmed by it. He talked about it, the amount of people in his organization, the clients, the world-class athletes, the people that he didn't even know who've come forward to say, what can we do for you? What he said to me is when he stopped and realized the impact he's had on people by the overwhelming support he and Lauren have gotten through this journey, he said he's been lost for words for a guy who will tell you he's never lost for words. You know, and I said to him, you know, if you had to, or if you could encapsulate this in a gift, what would you call it? He said, I got two out of this that I would have never expected. I have the gift of love, and I have the gift of life. And those people have breathed that back into me. You know, the word inspire is to breathe life into another. Now, Brian has breathed life into many people, and they've returned that favor. Now, he has much more to breathe and much more to give, and watch what Brian Murphy's going to do, because the best part of this story is about to be written.
I think it's real important to really assess everyone's life and figure out what they really want to do. And what, if they can take one step, what is that one step they want to take? And make it, you know, a realistic step. You know, I could never say, you know, starting January 1st, I want to be 6 feet tall, because that will never happen. But it's got to be something, as you taught me, what is the why? It has to be something you have a very strong why for doing. And then focus on that one step. And I know, like, in my life, you know, I'm always trying to lose weight. You know, I'm always trying to, you know, accomplish different things. And 60% of the things I try to do, I fail. You know, they just don't work. As you know, I'm trying to get to 199, I'm not 199, right? But the 40% that I do, that does work, I think focusing on that and feeling good about the progress I made, and even if you just take one step, and anyone can take one step, you just take that one step and be proud of yourself and celebrate and rejoice in it. Don't worry about the 4 other missteps you took beforehand, and then take the next step, and then take the next step going towards a defined goal. You can do it. Everyone can do it. I can do it. Anyone can do it. But you just can't get burdened down by your failures. Because I think a lot of times people watch these programs, or I watch people speak, and I'm like, wow, everything in that guy's life is perfect. There's no way I could get to be like him. Like, he's good looking, he's skinny, he's rich as all heck, you know, he's got everything. Like, I just can't do that. But we don't really know. And in most people's lives, yeah, the surface looks good, but there's a lot of failures behind them. There's a lot of parts of their life that they're unhappy with as well. So I just, you know, you just have to focus on that one step and be real happy that you took that one step, and don't worry about all the other issues. You can get those issues later.
So, you know, as we wrap up this program with Brian Murphy, what's really interesting is something that perhaps I don't even think he recognized that he gave us, another gift. And that's how we set ourselves up to win. Very, very important. We're probably harder on ourselves than we are on anybody else. And setting up that criteria for success is important. Make it part of your plan. And the thing about it, we won't get anywhere without our plan, but in reality is things will never go to plan. Obstacles, setbacks, things that we have to overcome. It forces us to understand the lessons we've learned and to get back on course, to redirect, to pivot if we have to. Now, at birth, or prior to birth, myself and all of you great viewers and listeners were given gifts. They were inserted inside of you before you were shot down to earth in the mothership to come out into the world to execute your life assignment. Now, as I've said many times, you get the test before you get the lesson plan. But now, at this stage of your life, and having gone through what you have with Brian, you know many things about yourself, you see his gifts, and resident in those gifts are your own. So what's the gift? What are the gifts? How will you use those gifts to make a difference in the life of the people that you are surrounded by? One of the best ways to understand that gift and appreciate that gift is to teach that gift, to show people how you use that gift, how they themselves can use the gift. Literally, there are millions of people around the world looking for examples, real-life examples, that will touch them, move them, inspire them to have the courage to take the hardest trip for any of us inside, to understand that gift, find that gift, open that gift, and give it away. Whatever that gift may be, that's the life assignment. And before the clock expires, the time is now. Thanks for tuning in.